I think I'm going to start saying this in general now, that this is an ultimate truth-free zone. So
I love that.
just before people might come to the assumption that, okay, there's two more talking heads here to claim a new ultimate absolute truth that's undeniable, that this is not that, and that we are inviting people to explore, if they feel called to, a potentially more compelling worldview, contrasted with a lot of the Eastern self-negating stuff. Um, and take what resonates and leave what doesn't. But I think, as will come out probably in one of the questions, your kind of view that sort of deconstructs and presents an alternative to ultimate truth is likely to come up. So had to get that plug out there for
I like that. I think that's a good free zone to be in.
oh, great. Great. I'm glad we're there together. So, okay, I'm gonna pull up our document, and they're all really good. So I think
Okay.
I'll just randomly throw them at you and see what
Super.
works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this one I think is I mean, it's pretty commonly asked, but we get the response, which wouldn't necessarily just be to Unividualism, but that says, okay, this is just a belief system. Just stop. Reality can't be understood. Why even try? And somebody wrote, I've experienced oneness, and the experience reaches far beyond description. And other people who have experienced that feel the same way. So there's a knowing that reaches far beyond words and ideas. Anything else is like trying to grasp mist with your hand. Um, and again, says we can attempt to describe the ineffable that are derived from categorization, but they fail to fully describe it. So would love to put that out there, because I think that that's probably a good one to start with before we're exploring more of the philosophy.
I love the image that whoever's put that in as grasping mist with your hand. It's a really beautiful, poetic image. And I completely get it. So most of my life has been spent exploring that experience. And I've written many, many books which start with, wow, this is a mystery. I mean, nearly all of my books start with it. I think whenever I give a public presentation, I always start with, what the hell? And, it stops and ends there. The mystery is the impetus for the search, and it's also where you end up. But this idea that somehow there's areas of life which are just out of bounds to understanding, or even the whole of it. First, let's do the whole of it. The idea that the whole of it cannot be understood is nonsense, because we wouldn't be able to talk on the internet like this if people took that attitude. It's only
Were you saying that because I think that confuses me for a
okay.
second. That do you mean to say that, of course, we can't understand the whole, but we can understand parts of it?
Oh, well, no, what I said wasn't very eloquent, so I'm glad you picked me up on it. So what I was trying to say is the idea we should give up on understanding
Okay.
is just nuts, because our understanding has moved on incredibly. The idea that you can never capture something in words is not just true of the mystical, it's true of everything. And
Right.
I think we may have even talked about this. I mean, the example for me is, the famous story about the mango is the one I think we mentioned. I can't remember what we did and didn't talk about, but let's take chocolate. That's a nice one. Everyone knows if you've never tasted anything sweet, it would be impossible to get across what chocolate's like. So, but if you had, you could go, oh yeah, it's this really nice chocolate, and you'd know what it was. Same with the oneness. When I talk to people, and I obviously know a lot of people who have experienced this, we can talk about it because we both know what we're referring to. Have you captured it in words? No, but you can't capture anything in words. Nothing. Like words allow you to communicate about experience. So if there's shared experience, you can talk about it. If there's not shared experience, it's really, really, really hard. You have to try and find ways. And as somebody who's spent certainly the last 30 years introducing people to this experience, which they've never had before, I've really worked hard to find ways to guide people into a place where they suddenly get it.
Right.
And you can do that with words. Words are a way in which we share things. So I have sympathy with this question, but it feels also that it's missing something. And it's missing that even knowing what that experience is requires us to ideate, which is why one of the things which I guess has been an advantage for me is that I have written and studied experientially and philosophically, all these different spiritual traditions. And what I notice is that there's underlying human experiences like oneness, for example, but that different traditions talk about it in different ways. And that colors what they experience. So for some, it's a devotional experience. For others, it's really not. So it's not like there's the experience is just given. There's ideation involved in that experience. So being able to question how you interpret the experience it feels like really important. And the idea that you should just dismiss it, or that there's something special about spirituality. I mean, talk to people who study quantum physics. That's the opposite end in the evolutionary scale, I think, to spirituality. That's like the really foundational. It's really hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Anything which is not every day is hard to talk about and requires effort and requires you have to find ways. And I would much prefer to go for that, but with the qualification of what you started with. You're never going to nail it with a word. That's a misunderstanding of what words are.
Right.
Words enable you to move your ideation around. That's what they're designed for. And to communicate like we're doing now, which is fantastic. So there's something dismissive. I'm not saying this person was being dismissive, but what I come across a lot is that kind of like, no, and what it does is it leaves somebody with their own understanding unreflectively. They think they've got nothing, but they are ideating like mad. They just can't see it. And and that criticism is aimed at younger me, because that's what I did. Yeah. So once you've seen that, oh no, it's really good to reflect on all these things. It's not a waste of time. And whilst you'll never arrive at some ultimate anything, you does improve your understanding, and that changes your experience, which also improves.
Yeah, well said. And I think, not the whole point, but coming from my perspective, when we did those two conversations, I was focusing a lot on how these different views that you're sharing have really been powerful for a lot of people who feel kind of stuck in the self-negating, non-dual ultimate truth worldview that, okay, now I've seen that the self doesn't exist. That's completely undeniable. Everything is pure awareness. And for whatever reason, sometimes this can be really harmful to people's lives, or they simply find it becomes limiting, or it's not serving them in a positive direction, and they want to move on to a different view, but feel very stuck in that whole, well, it's non-conceptual, and I know it, and I've experienced it, so nothing else can, even touch that. But I think that when I went through that whole kind of world of the more kind of popular negation non-duality, was thinking that I had no concepts anymore, or thinking that this was all just the direct experience of everything with I have no belief system, no ideology. And then later to pick that apart and say, well, just a statement, everything is pure consciousness, is a very kind of sophisticated idea. And so these are the sorts of things that you kind of helped me to start to recognize, so that I could at least see what it was that I was in and what was going on.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that what I notice, and this is again directed at an old me as much as anyone else, is that what happens often is, I mean, I want to go to someone who says, I experience oneness, and go, what does that mean?
Mhm.
Because it could mean a lot of things. What does that mean? When you say it's all awareness, what does the word awareness signify there? And if you
Yeah.
can't answer those questions, you're not saying anything. All you're saying is, I had an experience. That's all you're
Right.
saying. And I liked it, perhaps,
Yeah.
or the other one, which I've only really got into over the last period of my life, is going, how did you have that experience? Because I'm having the experience of looking around the room with my eyes, and I'm interpreting it through my neurological system, blah, blah, blah. There's the psyche. When you experience that oneness, you couldn't do it with your senses. So how did you experience? And these seem like really important questions which just don't get asked. And dismissing them is just going, oh, I don't want to think about it. That's what it's
Right.
really saying. I leave it. It just. Now that's okay. People want to do that. That's up to them. But I would like them at least to give the dignity to two people who are taking a different attitude. To the person who's going, well, that's not good enough for me. I want to be able to ask those questions and push my understanding. and for people to have the respect to go, oh, okay, you're interested in that, great. But
Right.
also, and this is tricky, to allow the other people who may be going, well, I just know that God wants me to do this, or whatever it is, Scientology is the way, or whatever the thing is, or my guru is great, or I should go and commit these horrendous crimes, what to me are crimes because it's divinely. That's also somebody just going, don't think about it. Why is that wrong if it's okay for you to go, don't think about it?
Mhm.
So you either have to go, well, I'm just off on my own little thing and it's got no relationship to anyone else, or you have to be able to go, we have to weigh these different options and try and understand them and interact with each other and seek the truth together, where the truth means the most trustworthy way of understanding this we can find right now between us. And then it becomes less of a, I'm off on my own little thing. It becomes something we can share, and we may disagree, but that's okay. We can still share it and work together to find a deeper understanding. And that's what's been happening in the scientific arena, which is why we have the internet, and it hasn't been happening in the spiritual arena, which is why it's still stuck in the ancient world. Often it's still stuck in a pre-scientific form
Mhm.
because it hasn't done that. It has not reflected on itself. And one of the big reasons it's so terribly stuck is when people go, you can't even think about it. Don't think about it. It's just a mystery. Who knows?
Mhm.
Whereas the both and approach for me is, it is a mystery. Never lose that. And then do your best to understand it.
Right.
And then keep coming back to, wow, it's a mystery. And then do your best to understand it. And those two can fit together perfectly.
I'm with you, and that's been super helpful for me, especially was to be able to say, and I know this is what you're saying too, is that all of this is really about what you conclude from these experiences and what your interpretations are, and being able to say that all of these, spiritual experiences are real and they're profound and they can be positive, they can also be wildly negative, but that you're not negating or invalidating any of those experiences. For example, of I am pure consciousness, but you're reinterpreting it to, okay, there was an experience that happened there, but perhaps what didn't happen was that you didn't just become your true self of pure consciousness. So people are not really seeing that, well, you're putting forth a very specific interpretation, even if you don't feel like you're clinging to that. And for me, I think there's so much immense positive value in considering how those interpretations affect us as humans. How do they affect society? How do they make people act? Are people who are experiencing reality this way and putting forth that interpretation, or is it making people kinder? Is it making them actually more interconnected? Or, what? And because I've seen a lot of the harmful effects and qualities that this can lead to. So back to what we're doing here, which is looking at some potentially more compelling and humanistic ways to interpret these mysterious experiences.
Beautifully put. Yeah, I resonate with all of that, Jessica. The thought that's coming to me, and I'm always looking for ways to just get it across so that people who are sitting on the fence, because it's a very common attitude, and I do, I get it, which goes, oh, it's a mystery, and it's to feel the mystery is such a lovely thing. I mean, I really recommend it. But I'm always looking to find us an example which people wouldn't do, and then them to be able to go, well, isn't that the same? So that the example that's coming up, I'm going to try it and see if it works. Maybe it will work. Maybe it won't. We'll find out. But I want to go, look, if you went back in time to your ancestors, not, around the time that a lot of spirituality was being, the books were being written, and you went, and you heard the thunder, and your ancestors said to you, "Oh, that's a god
Mm.
with a big mallet in the sky hitting a big anvil. That's what that is." And you went, "I don't think it is. I think it might be electromagnetism," which would make any sense to them, but you could say it. The two things with that, I think, is that if they then went, "Well, it's a god. What more can you say? It's a mystery. No one understands the gods."
Mhm.
It's like you'd go, "Oh yeah, okay, but we can actually understand this, and it's actually something else." And it's a bit like that with all of these things. Only if you stop and you can find a better understanding, which makes the old one look not as good. But the thunder is still the thunder. They
Yeah.
hear it, you hear it. They heard it then, you heard it now. Same with the experience. of awakening, let's just call it, that people have these experiences, oneness, overwhelming love, benevolence, all those things, that you can trace that back. I've done it right through history.
Yeah.
It changes. It's not the same, but it's a thread. But that doesn't mean that we can't also keep understanding it better,
Mhm.
like we have with everything else.
Right. In new ways and exploring how that changes
In,
your
in,
experience.
exactly right. And it changes the experience. You understand it in new, better ways. And this is another very important human experience which we can do that with.
Yeah. And also strikes me as something that I, came to realize in my experience was like all of these different interpretations and scientific explanations, they don't take away the mystery. It's
Yeah.
adding in some way. I mean, electromagnetism, what is that? That
Yeah.
itself is also a
Yeah.
mystery.
Yeah.
They help
Exactly.
to
Exactly right.
understand, but it doesn't take away the mystery. It can still be a mystery and having some ways to describe it or interpret it. So, all
Yeah.
right, excellent. Let's see what we have next.